Welcome to today's episode from the 52 series, The Practical Life Confusion Points. Today we're covering awareness versus alarmism. What is the difference? So we're gonna let Kyo tell us the 12 points and then we're gonna move through them without me interrupting. And at the end, we're gonna do our usual grounding and probably a few questions. So here we go. Let's get started.
52 Practical Life Confusion Points, Episode 8, Awareness versus Alarmism, Stink Bomb Mode 7, Live Interview Format, Thumb versus Flowerpot Sirens, Google's Perfect Absurdity Signal. The 12 points we will cover. Definition layer. What exactly is the difference between awareness and alarmism? Why the two are constantly confused? Nervous system mechanics. How alarmism activates fight-flight loops, while awareness supports regulated perception. Information versus activation. When information is meant to inform thinking versus when it is designed to trigger reaction. Urgency signaling. How alarmism uses urgency moral pressure. Share this now to bypass thinking. Algorithmic incentives. Why alarmist content spreads faster, outrage travels, nuance crawls, platforms reward engagement spikes. Identity attachment. When information becomes tribal identity rather than shared investigation. Agency versus helplessness awareness increases choice and preparation. Alarmism creates permanent emergency psychology. Authority signaling. How alarmist messaging often includes hidden authority frames. Experts say, everyone must know, only fools doubt this. Emotional amplification. Alarmism uses emotional escalation loops to maintain attention. Awareness allows emotional de-escalation. The crisis economy. How media ecosystems profit from permanent alert states. Fear keeps audiences returning. Desensitization and burnout. What happens when every issue becomes existential? People either collapse into anxiety or stop listening completely. The architect balance, the healthy middle path, clear perception of risk, regulated nervous system, awareness without hysteria. Stink bomb frame. During the episode, we will separate fact, interpretation, emotional signaling, authority performance, so viewers can see the mechanics, not just the message. Core question for the episode: how do we stay informed without turning our nervous system into a permanent emergency broadcast system? Stink Petals Preview, Pattern Hygiene Rating Scale. We will evaluate common messaging styles on the 0 to 7 petal scale. 0 equals clean awareness. 7, maximum alarmism. When you're ready, we begin the interview flow. Shall we explain point 1, the definitions of awareness vs alarmism? Tasher, Episode 8. Point 1, definition layer, awareness versus alarmism. Let's start at the root confusion because most debates begin here. People think they are raising awareness when in reality they are raising alarms. These two things feel similar emotionally, but structurally they are very different. Awareness. Awareness is information that expands perception. It gives people context, evidence, uncertainty boundaries, time to think. Awareness says, open quote, here is something worth examining, close quote. It invites curiosity. The nervous system stays regulated enough to process information. Awareness allows investigation, nuance, disagreement, updating conclusions. It opens the map. Alarmism. Alarmism is information packaged to trigger urgency. The goal is activation, not understanding. Alarmism says, open quote, this is urgent. You must react now, close quote. Common signals include catastrophic framing, moral pressure, binary thinking, emotional escalation. Instead of curiosity, it creates panic outrage, tribal alignment. It sets the map on fire. The nervous system difference. This is the key. Awareness operates when the brain is in cognitive mode. Alarmism pushes the brain into survival mode. When survival mode activates, nuance disappears, complexity collapses, thinking narrows. People become reactive rather than analytical. Simple test: when encountering information, ask, does this help me think more clearly? Or does this push me to react immediately? If the message demands instant emotional response, it is usually alarmism. Architect note: many systems today blur this distinction intentionally. Why? Because alarmism spreads faster, fear travels, nuance requires stink bomb snapshot. Example message: everyone must share this immediately or you are part of the problem. Breakdown: fact, unknown value, moral pressure, emotion, urgency, authority implied, stink petals rating 6-7, highly alarmist structure. Point 2, nervous system mechanics. Why alarmism is biologically powerful and why awareness spreads much more slowly. Shall we go there? Episode 8, Point 2, nervous system mechanics. Why alarmism spreads so easily. This is where the confusion becomes biological, not just intellectual. Humans did not evolve to process thousands of pieces of information calmly. We evolved to detect threat signals, and the brain has a very fast alarm system. The two processing modes. Regulated cognition, awareness mode. When the nervous system is calm enough, the prefrontal cortex is active. People evaluate evidence. Nuance is possible. Curiosity remains open. This is the state where learning happens. Threat activation, alarm mode. When the nervous system detects danger, amygdala activates, stress hormones rise, attention narrows, reaction becomes immediate. The brain shifts from thinking, reacting. This is extremely useful for real danger, but it becomes problematic when information constantly triggers it. Why alarmism works so well. Alarmist messaging exploits 3 ancient survival shortcuts. Negativity bias. The brain prioritizes threats over neutral information. Bad news gets attention first. Urgency bias. Signals of immediate danger override careful thinking. Act now messages bypass evaluation. Social threat signals. When others appear alarmed, the brain assumes danger. Panic spreads socially. TAC, the contagion effect. Alarmist information spreads like emotional wildfire. Person A reacts, person B feels the urgency, person C escalates the tone. Soon the signal becomes stronger than the original event. This is called emotional amplification. What awareness does differently, awareness slows the loop. It says, let's examine this. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know yet. This creates cognitive space, and cognitive space allows regulation. TAG, architect observation. Modern media systems frequently operate by keeping the nervous system slightly activated. Not total panic, but constant low-level alarm, just enough to keep attention hooked. Stink bomb snapshot. Example headline structure. Scientists warn we may be heading toward catastrophe. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified. Interpretation, catastrophic projection. Emotion, fear trigger. Authority, scientists. Stink petals rating 5-7. Moderate alarmist framing. Next point. Information versus activation. When messages are designed to inform thinking versus when they are designed to trigger reaction. Ready? Episode 8, Point 3, Information vs. Activation. This is one of the clearest pattern markers in media and public discourse. Not all information is meant to inform. Some information is packaged primarily to activate people emotionally, and once you see this distinction, you start recognizing it everywhere. Information, awareness structure. Information exists to increase understanding. It usually includes context, evidence, time frames, limitations, competing explanations. Information says, open quote, here is the situation, let's examine it. Close quote, it encourages investigation thinking, comparison of sources. The emotional tone is usually neutral or measured. Activation, alarm structure. Activation messages aim to mobilize reaction. Their structure is different. They usually contain dramatic framing, simplified villains or heroes, urgency signals, emotional escalation. Activation says, open quote, you must respond immediately, close quote. These messages often include, share this now. Everyone must see this. If you care, you will act. Thinking becomes secondary to emotional alignment. Why activation dominates online? Activation spreads faster because it triggers outrage, fear, moral urgency, identity defense. These emotions drive sharing, commenting, engagement. Algorithms amplify content that creates reaction, not necessarily content that improves understanding. The loop activation messages create a cycle. Information, emotional trigger, reaction, amplification, stronger framing, more reaction. Each step increases intensity. Soon the conversation becomes about who is reacting more strongly, not who is thinking more clearly. Architect lens. An important skill is recognizing the difference between maps versus sirens. Maps help you navigate. Sirens demand attention but do not explain the terrain. Your thumbnail actually captures this perfectly. Equals examining the map, sirens growing out of a flower pot, noise without structure. Snapshot. Example message. This proves everything we've been warning about. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified event. Interpretation, sweeping conclusion. Emotion, urgency, validation. Authority, implied insider knowledge. Stink petals rating, 6-7. Highly activation-oriented messaging. Next point, point 4, urgency signaling. How alarmist communication uses urgency cues to bypass critical thinking. Shall we continue? Episode 8, point 4, urgency signaling. How alarmist communication bypasses thinking. One of the most powerful tools in alarmist messaging is urgency. Urgency is not always wrong. Sometimes it is necessary. But when urgency becomes the default communication style, it stops informing and starts overriding cognition. The urgency shortcut. When people hear signals like, "This is urgent," "Act immediately," "Everyone must know this now," the brain interprets the message as potential danger. The nervous system automatically prioritizes speed over accuracy. This is a survival reflex. What happens in the brain? Urgency cues trigger a shift. Thinking mode, reaction mode. This means less evaluation of evidence, faster emotional alignment, reduced tolerance for nuance. People feel pressure to choose a side quickly. Common urgency phrases. Alarmist communication often relies on familiar signals such as, "This changes everything." "They don't want you to know this." "You must watch this before it's removed." "Share this before it disappears." These phrases create time pressure. Time pressure reduces critical thinking capacity. The virality effect. Urgency also encourages rapid sharing. When people feel something is time sensitive, they often forward it before verifying it. This creates a chain reaction. Alarm, sharing, amplification, stronger alarm. Awareness handles time differently. Awareness messages respect the importance of processing time. They often include language like, "Here's what we know so far." "More information is still emerging." "Let's examine the evidence." Instead of compressing time, awareness expands it. That expansion allows the brain to stay regulated. Architect observation. Healthy communication balances alertness with clarity. Not every signal needs to be treated as a 5-alarm emergency. When everything is urgent, eventually nothing is processed properly. Stink bomb snapshot. Example message. You must watch this immediately before they delete it. Breakdown. Fact, unknown. Interpretation, suppression claim. Emotion, fear plus urgency. Authority, implied insider warning. Stink petals rating, maximum alarmist structure. Next point, point 5, algorithmic incentives. Why digital platforms unintentionally reward alarmism over awareness. Ready to continue? Episode 8, algorithmic incentives. Why alarmism spreads faster than awareness. Now we arrive at a structural force that shapes modern communication, algorithms. Most digital platforms are designed to maximize engagement, not clarity, and engagement tends to favor strong emotional signals. How attention systems work. Platforms measure things like clicks, comments, shares, watch time, reaction speed. The algorithm does not understand truth, nuance, or context. It simply detects what keeps people interacting. Why alarmism performs well. Alarmist content activates emotions that drive engagement: fear, outrage, moral urgency, shock. These emotions cause people to comment quickly, share widely, argue in the replies. The platform interprets this as valuable content. Why awareness spreads more slowly. Awareness content typically produces reflection, thinking, quiet understanding. These responses generate less visible engagement signals. Someone calmly thinking about a topic does not produce dozens of comments, rapid sharing, heated debates. So awareness often spreads more slowly, even when it is more useful. The feedback loop. Once creators realize what the algorithm rewards, a pattern emerges. Emotional content performs better. Creators adjust their messaging, tone becomes more dramatic. Audience expectations shift toward intensity. Over time, the system normalizes alarmist framing, architect lens. This doesn't require bad intentions. Many creators start with good motives, but if calm information receives little visibility while dramatic messages spread widely, the environment gradually favors louder signals. The system quietly nudges communication toward higher emotional voltage. Snapshot. Example headline structure. Shocking revelation that everyone must see. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified. Interpretation, exaggerated significance. Emotion, shock trigger. Authority, implied insider knowledge. Stink pedals rating, 6-7 high engagement optimized alarm framing. Next point. Point 6. Identity attachment. How information stops being about facts and becomes about belonging to a group. Ready to continue? Episode 8. Point 6. Attachment. When information becomes belonging. This is where awareness and alarmism often cross a hidden line. Information stops being about understanding reality and becomes about belonging to a tribe. Once identity enters the picture, thinking becomes much harder. How identity attachment forms. At first, people simply encounter information. Then a second layer appears. People like us believe this. Our group understands the truth. Those people are blind or evil. Information becomes a badge of belonging. What alarmism does here. Alarmist narratives often reinforce identity signals. They divide the world into the awakened versus the ignorant, or the righteous versus the corrupt. Once this framing takes hold, disagreement becomes socially dangerous, because questioning the information may feel like betraying the group. Dash, the tribal loop. The process often unfolds like this. A dramatic claim spreads. A community forms around the claim. The claim becomes a group identity marker. Doubt becomes disloyalty. Now the conversation is no longer about evidence. It is about belonging. Awareness handles identity differently. Awareness allows people to say, this is my current understanding. New evidence could change my view. Different interpretations are possible. Belonging does not require intellectual agreement. It allows curiosity and disagreement. Architect. Identity-based information systems tend to produce strong emotional cohesion but low adaptability. When beliefs are tied to identity, updating those beliefs feels like losing part of oneself. Awareness-based systems remain flexible because identity is not tied to conclusions. Stink bomb snapshot. Example message. If you still question this, you're part of the problem. Breakdown. Fact, none provided. Interpretation, moral framing, emotion, shame pressure, authority, group consensus implied. Stink pedals rating, strong identity pressure structure. Next point. Point 7. Agency versus helplessness. How awareness increases choice and preparation, while alarmism often produces psychological paralysis. Shall we continue? Episode 8.7. Agency versus helplessness. The psychological outcome of awareness versus alarmism. One of the clearest ways to distinguish awareness from alarmism is to look at what it does to people's sense of agency. Does the information leave people more capable of acting wisely, or does it leave them feeling overwhelmed and powerless? Awareness builds agency. Healthy awareness usually includes context, realistic boundaries, possible responses. Time horizons. It says, open quote, here is the situation. Here are some things you might do. Close quote. Even when the issue is serious, awareness preserves choice. People feel they can investigate, prepare, evaluate options. The nervous system stays engaged but not paralyzed. Alarmism creates helplessness. Alarmist messaging often focuses on catastrophic outcomes, unstoppable forces, hidden enemies, total system failure. The underlying message becomes, open quote, everything is collapsing and you cannot stop it. Close quote. This produces two common reactions, panic activism or resignation and withdrawal. Both reduce thoughtful decision making. The paralysis loop. When people feel overwhelmed by constant crisis signals, they often respond by doom scrolling, arguing online, disengaging from real-world action. Information overload becomes emotional exhaustion. The original goal of raising awareness ends up reducing effective action. Awareness keeps scale in perspective. Healthy awareness distinguishes between what an individual can influence, what requires collective action, what is outside current control. This prevents false urgency and false responsibility. Architect lens. One of the signs of a mature information system is that it helps people locate themselves within the map. Not every problem requires immediate reaction from every person. Understanding scale restores agency and proportion. Stink bomb snapshot, example message. The system is completely broken and there's nothing anyone can do. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified systemic issue. Interpretation, total collapse claim. Emotion, despair, fatalism. Authority, sweeping conclusion. Stink petals rating, 5, strong helplessness framing. Now next point. Point 8. Authority signaling. How alarmist communication often relies on borrowed authority to reinforce urgency. Ready to move forward? Episode 8. Point 8. Authority signaling. How alarmism borrows credibility. Another pattern that appears frequently in alarmist communication is authority signaling. Instead of presenting clear evidence, the message leans on who supposedly said it. Authority becomes a shortcut for persuasion. What authority signaling looks like: you often see phrases such as experts say, scientists warn, insiders confirm, doctors are sounding the alarm. The structure is subtle. Instead of explaining the reasoning or data, the message asks the audience to trust the source. How alarmism uses authority. Alarmist messaging often combines authority plus urgency. For example, experts warn catastrophe may be coming. Even without details, the phrase activates two powerful signals: authority, danger. This combination encourages people to react before investigating. Awareness handles authority differently. Healthy awareness does not reject expertise, but it shows the reasoning behind the claim. It might include the evidence, the uncertainty, the competing interpretations. Instead of saying, experts say this is true, awareness explains why experts think this, what evidence supports it, what remains uncertain. The authority shortcut. Authority shortcuts are appealing because they save cognitive effort. Instead of analyzing information ourselves, we rely on someone else's judgment. Sometimes this is reasonable, but when authority is combined with alarmist framing, it can suppress independent thinking. Architect observation. A healthy knowledge system distinguishes between earned expertise and performed authority. Earned expertise explains its reasoning. Performed authority relies on status signals. Stink bomb snapshot. Example message. Top experts say disaster is inevitable. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified event, interpretation, inevitability claim. Emotion, fear, escalation, authority, top experts. Stink petals rating 6-7. Strong authority, amplified alarm structure. Next point. Point 9. Emotional amplification. How alarmism escalates emotional tone to maintain attention and engagement. Ready? Episode 8.9. Emotional amplification. How alarmism keeps the emotional volume rising. Once alarmist messaging begins circulating, something interesting happens. The emotional tone escalates over time. Why? Because strong emotions attract attention, and attention fuels amplification. The escalation mechanism. When people share emotionally intense messages, the next person often raises the emotional volume slightly. For example, original message. This situation may be concerning. Next layer. This is very serious. Next layer. This is catastrophic. Each repetition intensifies the framing, the amplification loop. The emotional escalation usually follows this pattern. A concerning issue appears. The first interpretation spread. Emotional framing increases. Attention grows. The framing becomes more dramatic. Soon the emotional narrative becomes stronger than the original facts. Attack why emotion drives virality. Emotion activates three powerful behaviors: sharing, arguing, defending positions. Calm information rarely triggers these reactions, but emotionally charged information spreads through conversation chains. Awareness uses emotion differently. Awareness does not eliminate emotion, but it keeps emotion proportional to the evidence. Instead of escalating tone, awareness encourages perspective verification, thoughtful discussion. Emotion becomes information, not fuel for escalation. One sign that a conversation has shifted toward alarmism is when tone escalates faster than evidence. When the emotional signal keeps rising while the factual foundation remains unclear, the conversation is being driven by amplification dynamics. Stink bomb snapshot. Example message progression. Something unusual happened. This proves a massive problem. This is the worst crisis ever. Breakdown. Fact, initial event. Interpretation, expanding narrative. Emotion, escalating alarm. Authority, implied consensus. Stink petals rating 5-7, moderate emotional amplification. Next point, the crisis economy. How entire media ecosystems can become dependent on constant alarm signals. Shall we continue? Episode 8, The Crisis Economy. Why constant alarm becomes a business model. At a certain scale, alarmism stops being just a communication style. It becomes an economic system. Entire media ecosystems can begin to depend on continuous crisis signals to maintain attention. Attention as currency. Modern information platforms operate on a simple principle. Attention equals value. More attention means more advertising revenue, more subscriptions, more visibility, more influence. So the question becomes, what keeps attention activated? Crisis is an attention magnet. Human brains instinctively focus on potential threats. This means that stories framed as crises tend to produce higher engagement, longer watch time, more comments, more emotional reactions. The system unintentionally rewards high alert messaging. The permanent alert loop. Once audiences become accustomed to dramatic framing, the content must maintain high intensity to keep attention. This produces a cycle. Crisis framing attracts attention. Attention increases revenue. Revenue incentivizes more crisis framing. Tone escalates over time. The result is permanent alert mode, the cost of permanent crisis. When audiences are exposed to continuous alarm signals, several things often happen. Emotional exhaustion, increased polarization, reduced trust in institutions, difficulty distinguishing real threats from exaggerated ones. People may eventually become desensitized. When everything is presented as a crisis, actual emergencies become harder to recognize. Architect observation. The crisis economy does not necessarily require malicious intent. It can emerge simply because attention systems reward intensity. Creators, journalists, and platforms adapt to the signals that produce visibility and survival within the system. Stink bomb snapshot. Example headline structure. The crisis that will change everything forever. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified event. Interpretation, total transformation claim. Emotion, alarm escalation. Authority, implied historical significance. Stink petals rating, high crisis economy framing. Next point. Point 11, desensitization and burnout. What happens when audiences are exposed to too many alarm signals for too long? Ready for the next? Episode 8, desensitization and burnout. What happens when alarm becomes constant? When the nervous system is exposed to too many alarm signals, something predictable happens. It cannot stay in crisis mode forever, so it eventually shifts into two survival responses: hyperanxiety or emotional shutdown. Both are forms of burnout. The nervous system limit. Human nervous systems are designed for temporary stress responses. Danger appears, body activates, danger passes, system resets. But modern information environments often produce constant alerts, constant crises, constant outrage, without recovery periods. This keeps people in chronic activation. The two common outcomes. Hyperactivation. Some people stay in permanent vigilance. They monitor every new threat signal, constantly check updates, react emotionally to each new story. This creates anxiety and exhaustion. Shutdown, disengagement. Other people eventually do the opposite. They stop paying attention. They say things like, everything is broken anyway, nothing can be trusted, I'm done following the news. The nervous system protects itself by switching off engagement. Why this matters? When people burn out, two important capacities decline. Discernment, collective problem solving. Societies function best when citizens are informed but regulated. Burnout destroys that balance. Architect lens, a healthy information system does not keep people in permanent alert mode. It alternates between investigation, reflection, recovery. This rhythm allows attention to reset. Without resets, the system collapses into noise. Stink bomb snapshot. Example message pattern. Everything is terrible and getting worse every day. Breakdown. Fact, unspecified. Interpretation, universal decline. Emotion, despairs. Alarm authority, sweeping generalization. Stink petals rating, 7, chronic alarm framing. Final 12, the architect balance. How to maintain clear awareness without falling into alarmism. Shall we close the map? Episode 8, Point 12, the architect balance. How to stay aware without becoming alarmed. Now we close the map, because the goal is not ignorance, and the goal is not panic. The goal is regulated awareness. The balance point, healthy perception lives between two extremes. Ignorance, pretending problems don't exist, Alarmism, treating every signal as catastrophe. The middle path is awareness, seeing clearly without emotional hijacking. The architect skill. Architect Cognition develops 3 abilities. Signal recognition. Is this information or activation messaging? Emotional separation. Can I observe the message without absorbing its emotional charge? Scale awareness. Is this local, systemic, long-term, speculative? Understanding scale prevents false urgency. The 3 questions tool. When encountering alarming information, pause and ask, what is the actual fact here? What interpretation is being added? What emotion is the message trying to trigger? This simple separation restores clarity. Healthy awareness practice. Healthy awareness looks like curiosity instead of panic investigation, instead of reaction perspective, instead of escalation. It allows people to see patterns without becoming trapped in them. The healthiest information culture. A mature society encourages clear evidence, emotional regulation, intellectual humility, room for disagreement, not constant alarm, not forced certainty, just clearer maps. Final stink bomb summary. The confusion between awareness and alarmism often comes from mixing 4 layers. Fact interpretation, emotion authority. When these layers blur, alarmism spreads. When they are separated, awareness emerges. Stink petals final map. Awareness structure, 0 to 2 petals. Alarmist structure, 5 to 7 petals. The goal is not zero emotion, but proportionate emotion. Final line for the episode. Awareness expands the map. Alarmism sets the map on fire. Choose the lens, not the siren. End of episode 8. Awareness versus alarmism.
Now we're gonna do a grounding session for the 12 archetypes. And then I'm gonna ask a couple questions.
Grounding routine, all 12 archetypes. Closing integration for episode 8, awareness versus alarmism. This short routine helps each archetype reset the nervous system after exposure to high-intensity information. The goal is not to suppress thinking. The goal is to restore regulation so thinking remains clear. Take a slow breath before beginning. The siren, emotion amplifier. When alarm signals appear, the siren may feel them very strongly. Grounding. Place one hand on the heart. Slow the breathing. Ask, what is the actual signal here? Let emotion become information, not overwhelm. Number 2, the vixen, social strategist. The vixen reads social dynamics quickly and may react to group pressure signals. Grounding. Relax the shoulders, soften the jaw, ask, is this about belonging or about truth? This separates social energy from evidence. Number 3, the chaos jester, pattern disruptor. The jester notices absurdities but can sometimes amplify them. Grounding. Take one slow breath through the nose. Exhale slowly through the mouth. Ask, is humor clarifying the map or adding noise? Use disruption to reveal patterns, not escalate chaos. Number 4, the corporate titan, systems builder. The titan wants to solve problems immediately. Alarmist messaging can trigger urgency to act before understanding. Grounding, pause the impulse to fix. Take 3 calm breaths. Ask, what part of this system is actually verified? Then move from reaction structure. Number 5, the wisdom merchant, knowledge translator. The merchant may want to explain everything quickly. Grounding. Slow the pace of speech. Observe the information carefully. Ask, is this knowledge or speculation? Translate only what is grounded. Number 6, the mindful oracle, emotional regulator. The oracle senses emotional currents in conversations. Grounding. Inhale slowly. Exhale longer than the inhale. Ask, what emotion is moving through this conversation? Naming emotion restores clarity. Number 7, the drama oracle amplifier. This archetype feels stories strongly and may become immersed in narrative tension. Grounding. Place both feet firmly on the floor. Take 2 steady breaths. Ask what part of this story is evidence. Return from story, signal. Number 8, the fox shadow, pattern skeptic. The fox shadow sees manipulation quickly but may become overly suspicious. Grounding. Relax the brow. Breathe slowly. Ask, is this pattern confirmed or inferred? Skepticism becomes discernment. Number 9, the fox ascendant. The ascendant sees complex patterns rapidly. Grounding. Slow perception intentionally. Focus on one detail at a time. Ask which signal matters most here. This prevents pattern overload. Number 10, the architect origin map builder. The architect builds frameworks to understand complexity. Grounding. Pause before constructing explanations, observe quietly. Ask what information is still missing. Allow the map to emerge gradually. Number 11, the Architect Primark System Integrator. The Primark coordinates multiple layers of understanding. Grounding. Inhale slowly, exhale and relax the shoulders. Ask which layer is fact and which is interpretation. Separation restores precision. Number 12, the Chimera Core Integrated Awareness. The Chimera holds multiple archetypes simultaneously. Grounding, breathe calmly, feel the body settle, observe without judgment. Then remember, you can step out of any activated archetype at any time. The archetypes are strategies, not identities. Final reset. Take one slow breath. Let the shoulders drop. Relax the jaw. Return attention to the room around you. The map is still there, but you are no longer inside the alarm. If in doubt, tap it out.
So then I said, if you could give one important step anyone could take to always know the difference between the two, what would it be? We already covered, but just one last.
The one-step test. How to always distinguish awareness from alarmism. If I had to give one single step, it would be this. Delay your reaction for 10 seconds. Just pause. Do nothing for a moment. Take one breath, because alarmism depends on removing the pause. Why this works. Alarmist messaging almost always contains a hidden rule. React immediately. It pushes urgency, sharing, outrage, emotional alignment. If you pause even briefly, something powerful happens. The thinking brain comes back online. What to do during the pause? Ask one question. What is the actual fact here? Not the story, not the conclusion, just the verifiable signal. For example, message, everything is collapsing. Fact check, what exactly happened? Often the factual core is much smaller than the narrative built around it. Why this single step is so powerful? That short pause breaks the entire alarm loop. Alarm, reaction, sharing, amplification becomes signal, pause, examination, choice. You regain agency. Simple memory tool. Think of your thumbnail. Fox with the lens versus sirens in a flower pot. The fox always pauses and looks. Sirens always demand immediate attention. The rule: if a message cannot survive a 10-second pause, it is probably alarmism. Awareness is never afraid of time and examination. Pause, look, then decide.
Did you hear it? Pause, look, and then decide. So thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next episode. And of course, for those of you who are here on the live, should we do something fun just for you? What do you think? See